Okay, what's going on, everybody? Within the world of Blue Lock, it's pretty clear that, at least for the most part, strength is what matters above all else. You can be the fastest, the strongest, the smartest, nobody really cares, as long as you can combine the skills that you have in order to become the world's best. But even though this is the case and strength is what matters above all else, there are certain factors of each character that has managed to give them a specific aura in their nature, and still a sense of emotion that we can't really describe every single time they pop up on the page, even if they may not be some of the fastest, strongest, smartest, or even just some of the best, like flat out. You can be one of the worst, like, overall players and still have a decent aura, and that's what we're going to take a look at today. Before I get into that though, I do want to take a quick second and shout out to Discord. We have a brand new server that some of you might not know about, in case you do want to keep up to date with not only what I'm doing, but the channel itself, as well as just overall Blue Lock content. We will be, kind of playing that stuff because it's going to be what I'm covering in my content. So, if you want to join, stay up to date, you can always join the server, and then, if you don't want to, we don't really care. But yeah, without out the way, I think we can get straight into it. As per usual, grab some snacks, fill those cups, sit back, relax, and enjoy. A few honorable mentions. I feel like I need to get some of these out the way because if I don't say some of these guys, people are going to be pissed. First of all, Lavinho. Okay, this might be criminal to not add Lavinho on the list. I know. The goal was amazing. The celebration, chills. Look, I'm shivering right now, dude. I don't know how else to describe it to you guys. But sadly, he's gonna have to stay an honorable mention because he's gonna miss out on this list. Next up, we're on the topic of pros. Chris Prince, sadly missing out on this list. And while we're saying that, we might as well just throw in Mark Snuffy because, that's all the pros who have actually missed out here. I don't know really how everyone's gonna take this because in some people's minds, just because you're strong and a world-class character means that you're gonna have the best aura to you. Snuffy had aura, but mainly just because we hadn't heard anything about him. Everything else that we've seen about other characters has kind of shown more aura, in the case of Chris Prince specifically. As we know, he's the number 2, always been hot on Noel Noah's tail, but I think the fact that he's been built up as the number 2 character, not only this, but he was defeated by Isagi in the midst of like a very early stage of his awakening. It's kind of insane to me that people are saying he has some of the best aura in the entire series when he's constantly portrayed as a number 2. How is that going to be like the best aura? I don't know. To each their own, but he's just going to become an honorable mention. Same with Mark Snuffy on my list. Next up, Kyorai Jin. Pretty newcomer into the manga. I mean, if you've seen episode Nagi, or read episode Nagi, I should say, you kind of know what Kyorai Jin's all about, but at least in the current manga itself, at the moment, he's been an anomaly. He was an anomaly leading up to the current moment where we are now, where he was able to assist Kaiser in that world-class super goal, the Kaiser Impact Magnus. In case you're not familiar with it, I do have a pretty in-depth video covering that goal in case you want to see the moment that happened. A pretty interesting collective group of skills, showcased more so in episode Nagi. If you want to see a more in-depth video of Kyorai and his skills, I guess I can make that for you guys if you guys want to see more informative videos like that. But I think the most interesting factor about Kyorai is the aura that he's drawn with, as well as just the unpredictability of his character as a whole. That's kind of the main draw and main defining aspects of his character, his unpredictability, the fact that not even the gods can tell him what he's going to do next. I feel like that adds the complete aura that you can ask for any sort of sub or background character, because that's someone who, no matter what, when they enter any sort of game, is going to make an impact, and no one knows what it's going to be, whether it's good or bad. He's always going to do something and be a pivotal factor in the game, and for that reason alone, I was considering putting him on the list, but he's still pretty new, so he's gonna have to be an honorable mention. And then finally, we got Don Lorenzo. I feel like the justification for this one's pretty self-explanatory. Lorenzo himself is a really dope character. His zombie step weapon, but not only this, the aura that he was drawn with from the very beginning, basically eating away at him and everything else around him. The Ace Eater being one of the coolest nicknames in the entirety of the series. His tattoo, his overall design, his backstory, even coming up from nothing to being one of the best defenders that we've seen in the series thus far. Some people are going to be very mad that Lorenzo missed out on this list, but the fact that he kind of more so spent all of his aura that he had off-screening Michael Kaiser, I get it. It's a big feat because it is Kaiser. He was basically the strongest striker in that match. I still think that kind of played to the detriment of Lorenzo because we got to see him less and less. If we got to see him more, I definitely feel like he could have been on this because, every single time he's around the ball, the play's basically shut down. But I think just his lack of screen time and the lack of feats that he actually did have, other than completely shutting down Kaiser, is the only reason he's going to be an honorable mention and not actually make it on the list. All right, moving on to the actual list at number 10, we have Nagi Shido. I know a lot of you guys are going to completely crucify me for this one because it may seem like the most insincere form of glazing that I could possibly bring to the table. I mean, what does Nagi do to justify a top 10 spot in basically any list nowadays? I mean, don't get me wrong, Nagi's had one of the worst fall from graces since Gohan. I mean, it's really sad to see what's happened to my boy, and the fact that they're doing him this dirty is so sad to hear, and he really doesn't warrant being on any sort of list as far as skills are concerned right now, at least in current times. However, when it comes to auras, due to the fact that he's been portrayed as such a destructive genius, due to the fact that he has his own spin-off manga where the art style is insane and encapsulates Nagi, his ideology, and his skills in a way that truly sends chills down your spine if you're truly a Nagi fan, I think that there's no way you can ignore his placement on this list being completely and utterly justified. Again, he's fallen completely from grace, so that's why he's going to come down at the number 10 spot here. I couldn't really justify him being any higher, but for the reasons that I have stated, biases aside, I do think Nagi deserves a spot on this list, so he's going to come in at number 10. Moving on to number 9, Shido Ryusei. I feel like some people may think this is completely blasphemous to have Shido either on the list at all or at the number 9 spot because he's way too low. It depends, and there's two different sides of the coin when it comes to the fan base on how Shido should be at least portrayed, or at least how cool he is. However, in my opinion, other than Baro and Rin, Shido was probably one of the first characters whose aura truly stood out to me. I'd say especially early on in Blue Lock, he was the first character who I kind of was like, whoa, who is this? The second I saw Shido, I was like, holy shit, I need to read this manga. Who is this guy? I need to see what he's all about, because his skills, just how destructive he truly could be, was something that I wanted to see, was something that the readers are always going to want to see. So that's why Shido is always going to have that aura to him. He's always going to be a character whose aura speaks for himself and could potentially speak more so than his skills do. But at the end of the day, I feel like his skill level is super high, and it's matched equally by his aura. Potentially the most potent scoring threat on any field. There's a reason that Shido Ryusei is feared on every single Japanese pitch. There's a reason that every time he's in the match, they're forced to man mark him directly. And there's a reason that Shido Ryusei deserves a spot on this top 10 list. Moving on to number 8, we got the final wall all over Aiku. I think this one makes the most sense. From the moment that he's introduced, Aiku is the most dangerous threat, at least to our main character, in the entirety of the series that we've seen thus far, because in that U20 match itself, it was the highest level of competition that Isagi had been introduced to up to that point. Other than Rin, Baro, Nagi, the top 3, the other players that he'd been encountered to thus far, it was nothing in comparison to the actual national players that he'd be thrown against in the U20 match. And at the helm, leading the charge for every single one of them, is Oliver Aiku, the number 1 defender in all of Japan, the man known as the God Snake. Aiku, from the moment he's introduced, at least sent chills down my spine. He was able to manhandle Shido, something that we've never seen anybody do before, even Kunigami, who is portrayed as one of the strongest characters in the entirety of the series. But not only this, his first feat in game was completely shutting down Isagi, someone whose foresight was something that was evolving rapidly to the point where everyone else was slowly being devoured by him, and surely he was right about to approach that awakening point, but it was completely shut down by Aiku. If it wasn't for Aiku, the U20 match would have gone completely differently, because Isagi might not have been stopped on 2 or 3 different attacks. He might have actually ended the game a lot quicker. But lo and behold, time after time, hard panel after hard panel, Oliver Aiku was always there. I would love to put him higher. I'd love to put him higher up on this list because the U20 match, as I've already stated, is one of the best and my personal favorite match in the entirety of the series. Not only this, but some of the coolest panels and my personal favorite panels come from Aiku himself and his plays in the U20 match. And even though I do personally believe that in the Ubers match, he was kind of bogged down a little bit and it did drop his placement in my personal list, I do feel like this is a good spot for him because he does deserve to be mentioned on the top 10 Auras list, at least as far as Blue Lockers are concerned. Alright, lucky number 7, we got Michael Kaiser. Now, I'm sorry, Fudge, I know you're going to be very mad about this, but it's just my truth. You guys know exactly how much I like Kaiser. He's one of my favorite characters in the entirety of the series, and he's been so ever since he's been introduced. However, he's gonna have to come down at this spot. Now, while he may be one of the best players in the Neo-Egoist League, while he may have had some of the coolest moments, the coolest goals, some of the most high skill goals that we've seen thus far, and possess some of the best weapons in the entirety of the series as far as U20s are concerned, Michael Kaiser is going to get dropped down on my list a little bit due to the fact that he's had such a prominent focus on him in recent times, and that's kind of killed a little bit of his aura and the mystery behind him. I know all of us have been dying to know more about Kaiser, but once we learn kind of about his backstory, the cruelty and the truth that he did come up against, the upbringing that he was sorely subjected to, not only this, but the somewhat come from behind victory backstory that we saw in his recent goal in the PXG match kind of completely shifts your perspective on Kaiser as a character. He seems almost like an anti-hero. He was subjected to such a cruel backstory that it's almost kind of made you forget that he's the villain, and in certain aspects you're rooting for him. You want to see him succeed because what he's doing right now isn't something that he's earned. It's something that he's clawed for, that he's almost killed for, that he's genuinely almost died for. But overall, I think it kind of makes sense. I feel like not only his design, but the art style that we see whenever he's chasing after the ball, whenever he actually takes a shot, it's some of the best designs in the entirety of the series, and he has brought some of the coolest moments, not only from his character, but from Isagi's character, from other characters when they're awakening from defeating Kaiser. He's just one of the best overall characters, and his aura speaks for himself. Moving on from one New Gen 11 to another, we have Atoshi Sai coming in at number 6. Now, this one was tricky. At first, I had Sai initially a lot lower in my list, but then after consulting with a lot of people, seeing what some of your guys' personal lists were, and kind of just reweighing everything in my mind over again, I really couldn't put Sai any lower than this, and any higher placements are justified, and it would make sense, but just not for me personally. Atoshi Sai in and of himself is the most aura-driven character that we have currently. It's kind of all that we drive off of whenever it comes to discussing how strong Atoshi Sai is. Yes, we did see his star-studded performance in the U20 match, boasting himself 1 goal, 2 assists, and an absolutely generational performance against his brother and the rest of the Blue Lockers. Atoshi Sai made it quite clear why he's regarded as the star of Japan. Every single player on the pitch feared him. His own brother, our main character, the side characters, hell, the fans themselves, the coach. Every single player feared Atoshi Sai. The JFU Fat Man was about to bust at the sight of him. Pause. That sounded really bad. Double pause on that one. But at the end of the day, I think I don't really need to explain anymore. Atoshi Sai deserves to be on this list, whether it's higher or lower. You guys can decide in the comments down below. But for me, he's going to come out of the number 6 spot. Okay, we have made it to the top 5, and this is where it's actually going to get serious, because at least in my personal opinion, by far, these are the characters in Blue Lock with the most aura at the current moment. And you can argue with the wall about. Never mind. Number 5. Atoshi Rin. Now, I can already see the comments right now. Oh, Rin glazing as always. Shut your mouths. Like, I don't want to hear it anymore. It's pretty self-explanatory to me why Rin is right here. From the second he was introduced, the second, all the way back in the second selection, he was by far the most threatening player that we had seen. He was the most mysterious player at the beginning. We didn't know much about him. Not only this, but when we started learning more about him, the mystery just grew and grew and grew. He was a player who was younger than our main character, better than our main character, related to one of the strongest characters in the series that we'd already been introduced to, someone whose skills were so above everybody else's that they were seen as the number 1 for so long, someone who up until just recently was the most dangerous player on any pitch he'd stepped on. Atoshi Rin deserves all the praise, at least as far as his aura is concerned. His absolutely jaw-dropping and, in my opinion, MVP performance in the U20 match, as well as all defeats he's managed to lay down throughout the entirety of the Neo-Egoist League so far, boasting the highest salary of all Blue Lockers, as well as being one of the few players to boast a hat-trick, Baro being the only other one. But also, he is one of the only current threats to our main character, Isagi Yii. There's a reason that Rin has been looked at as the top, the pinnacle of performance, the scariest player throughout the entirety of Blue Lock, and he's going to remain that way till the end. So, at least in my opinion, it makes sense. We're in top 5. Moving on to number 4, from one youth prodigy to another, we have Julian Loki. Now, this is a character who, in my personal opinion, has some of the craziest aura. From the moment that he was introduced, you knew he was something special. Obviously, based off his real-life counterpart, Mbappe, we all kind of expected that he was going to be one of the best, at least one of the fastest players in the series, but none of us were truly ready for the spectacle that Loki brought whenever he stepped on the pitch. Sure, I do understand it was a very, very weaker form of not just Isagi, but Rin and the rest of the Blue Lockers that he did go up against when we did see his performance in the World 5 match, and it's looking like, at least in the PXG vs Basel Munich match, we're most likely not going to see a sub-in from Loki. However, I do have to say, this kind of builds to the mystery. The few feats we've been given in stark contrast to the absolutely diabolical statements that we have talking about Loki, saying he's one of the best youth players in the entirety of the world, one of the fact that at the exact same age as some of the Blue Lockers, he's managed to become a master strike for one of France's top teams, and dozens upon dozens of creepy and ominous quotes, as well as panels. Even though, yeah, we haven't seen him too much, I do believe that Julian Loki by far has one of the most insane auras in the entirety of Blue Lock, so he's going to come in at the top 4 spot. Okay, number 3. You guys can't say I hate anymore. We got Isagi Yii. Now, I know. There's going to be a lot of Isagi haters who, I mean, somewhat similar to myself, are going to be like, what the fuck are you doing? But you can't deny the man anymore. Isagi Yii, especially in recent times in the current last 2 matches of the Neo-Egoist League, has been on a different timing, stacking win after win, collecting head after head on his way to the top. Not only has he managed to surpass all of his old friends and foes that we've seen thus far, Bachira devoured, Nagi devoured, Shigiri devoured, hell, even his own teammates like Kunigami and Yukimiya devoured. Not only this, but scoring a brace against one of the tightest defenses, pause, didn't mean it like that, tightest defenses in the entirety of the Neo-Egoist League in the Ubers. The godlike level of foresight he's currently playing with, as well as some of the coldest and hardest quotes that we are ever going to see from any main character, because he's truly talking his shit and backing it up in real time. Hate the man all you want, but he's truly proven as to why he's the main character. Isagi Yii, welcome, number 3 on the list. Slightly usurping Isagi though, we have the king, Baro Show. I think this one is going to be particular. Someone could put Baro above Isagi, some could put Isagi above Baro, but in my opinion at least, Baro's aura incarnate. From the moment he was introduced, you could tell this guy was dangerous. In the anime itself, it was obvious he is dangerous. He had death aura trailing him and his entire team. Every single team he's been on was glazing him for his entire life. The lion design with his specific aura is one of the coolest designs itself. His predator eye, one of the coolest weapons that we have seen, as well as his playstyle and ideology being one of the most blue lock things, as well as just one of the rawest and coolest things in the series. Say what you want about Baro Show, say he's a fallen king, say Isagi's better and he deserves to be above him on this list. However, I think from his inception, from the earth-shaking goal that he scored in the U20 match to tie the game, from his absolutely dominant hat-trick in the Neo-Egoist League, as well as being able to go blow for blow with Isagi Yii in the midst of his awakening, Baro Show, welcome to the number 2 spot on this list. And I feel like some people will be mad about that because Baro is the king. He should be number 1, at least in most people's lists. I feel like for aura wise, he's going to be number 1. However, in my personal opinion, there's only one man who stands above the rest in the entirety of the blue lock world, whether it be strength or aura, and that is the man himself, Noel Noah. From the very beginning of the story, it's made quite clear that in the world of football, there's only one man regarded as the strongest. The one who beat Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo for the Ballon d'Or. The man who rose up from the slums of France to the pinnacle of football once upon a time. The man who our protagonist himself, number 3 on this list by the way, had always inspired to be in his life. And that man's name was Noel Noah. I mean, time after time, it's proven that no matter who gets introduced in Blue Lock, there is always going to be one number 1. And yeah, that's Noel Noah. Like I said, from the moment he's introduced, he was displayed as the number 1, but he's managed to remain number 1 over and over and over again. And yeah, we've been able to see a little bit of what he can do, but there's still so much mystery as far as how good really is Noel Noah. I mean, we've seen him pushed somewhat against Mark Snuffy in the Ubers match. Same with his matchup against Lavinho in the Barcha match. We don't really know how hard he was going. If he was able to get past him pretty easily, or if he had to awaken to do that, we don't really know. However, it doesn't change the fact that no matter what, when Noel Noah enters the match, you know the game is going to revolve completely around him, and he will be the center focus of everybody on that pitch. It may be cliche, but the number 1 has to be the number 1. Noel Noah, congratulations on having the number 1 aura in the entirety of the Blue Lock manga. Okay, and that's going to do it for today. Let me know what your guys' personal top 10 list, at least as far as character auras, are in the comments down below. I really want to hear what you guys have to say, as well as letting me know what you thought about the video by leaving a like and considering subbing up to the channel with post notifications turned on so you never miss another banger from myself. And yeah, that's all I got for you today. Love you guys. Take it easy.